Most people don't walk into a training session ready to engage. They walk in with the email they haven't finished, the argument they had with their partner, that jerk who cut them off on traffic, in the way to the session. So how you start the session and how you ground people in place really matters and makes a difference for how they show up in the room. The thing is, there is no one magic activity to start a session well. So today, instead of giving you activities, I'm going to give you 6 things that you need to keep in mind when planning the start of your session. Let's get into it. Hi, I'm Kerri Price. I'm the founder of the Facilitators Network, and I use the principles of deliberate generosity to make sure that no meeting or workshop is ever wasted. I've been facilitating for 20 odd years, and in that time I've led thousands of meetings, workshops, and community conversations. These days I help other trainers and facilitators do it well too. There is no perfect one-size-fits-all way to start a session. It depends on the group, it depends on the context, it depends on the session that you're leading into. But while there's not one size fits all activity, there are 6 things that you need to keep in mind, and that's what we're going to cover in this video. The first thing you need to keep in mind is that you need to give people a chance to fully arrive. So often when you think about icebreakers or connection activities, people think about high energy and raising the roof, but actually a quiet moment that lets people just settle can be just, if not more, powerful. So instead of jumping knee deep into frazzled, frantic activities, think about something that will help people ground in place and get really present. I like to think of the start of my session like an on-ramp to a motorway. So people are kind of merging into the main flow of the session rather than taking a standing start from a set of traffic lights. Here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, we often use something called a karakia, which is an Indigenous prayer or blessing to really set the tone and the intention for what's to come. How you do that in your country might vary. It might be a poem, it might be a proverb, it might be a quote, but something that sets the tone and allows people a chance to fully arrive. The second thing you need to do is set the scene for contribution. My friend Chad Littlefield talks about designing workshops for contribution, not just consumption. But that's still not the norm for a lot of people. So if you want people contributing and engaging in your session, you need to set the scene for that really early on. I like to get people talking with each other from the moment they arrive, not just when the workshop starts. So that's about introducing people to each other. Hey Josh, this is Mary. You both work in the local government space. Of course, getting people talking to each other before the session start is only part of it. You want to set the scene from the moment the session officially begins as well. So instead of taking the first 5 or 10 minutes telling people how clever I am, I want to get to know how clever they are. So one way you can do that is avoid introductions that are the round robin. Let's go around the room, one person at a time, each introducing themselves. If you've got 20 people in the room, the last person in the circle has waited at least 20 minutes before they've had a chance to speak. It's much more effective to invite them to turn to their neighbour or get into small groups and getting them talking to each other within the first few minutes of the workshop. Third thing you need to think about when starting your session is to give people a chance to properly connect with each other. And when I say connect with each other, I mean going below or beyond trivia and actually getting to the heart of what makes us human. Dr. Gabor Mate says that safety is not the absence of fear, but the presence of connection. So in other words, we can go in and have some uncomfortable conversations, we can have differences of opinion, but if there's real connection in the room, people can feel safe to have those conversations. Connection is about getting to the heart of what it means to be human. So instead of inviting people to talk about their favorite cereal, think about questions that go a little bit deeper. What's your favourite way to start the day is similar to the serial question, but it gives a whole lot more scope for interesting response. The fourth thing that you need to keep in mind when starting your session is that you want people to be able to choose how vulnerable they are in that space. For some people, they're happy going really deep, really fast. For others, not so much. So whatever connection, question or activity you're choosing to start your session, it needs to provide enough direction to create focus, but enough scope that people can choose how vulnerable they want to be. Stephen Covey says that relationships travel at the speed of trust, and Brené Brown says that trust travels at the speed of vulnerability. So vulnerability is important to weave into your sessions, but how quickly you get there is an important thing to take note of. One of my favorite connection questions is to invite people to take out their car keys and share a story from what's on their key ring. That means they can tell a story about almost anything because those keys are a window to their life. The fifth thing you want to keep in mind when starting your session is to connect people to the purpose of the workshop. People roll their eyes and cross their arms when they hear about icebreakers or connection activities because they don't see the point. But if you can connect whatever questions you're asking or activity you're rolling out to the purpose of the session, then it feels more meaningful for them. So by now you're probably thinking, how does one activity do all of these things? Allow people to ground, get people talking quickly, connecting with each other and to the purpose of the session? So let me give you an example. Let's say you're doing a workshop around customer service. You might invite people to take 30 seconds on their own to think about the best or worst customer service experience they've ever had. That's giving them a little bit of time to ground in place. Then you might invite them to turn to their neighbour and share the story of that customer service experience. That's going beyond trivia and telling their partner a little bit about their life. It's also connected to the purpose of the session because the session is about customer service. So how you start your session doesn't have to be complicated. It's just taking consideration of all of the things that are important for setting the scene. The sixth thing you need to keep in mind to start your session well is to make time to align expectations. So people don't leave a workshop thinking it was terrible because it was terrible. They leave a workshop thinking it was terrible because it didn't align with their expectations for the session. So make sure you leave enough time at the beginning to make sure that why you think you're in the room and why they think they're in the room is the same thing. And if those expectations are different, think about how you can line them up and meet the needs of the group while still meeting the needs of the person who's contracted you to deliver the session. You also might need to align expectations around behaviour or how people want to engage. Now, I'm not suggesting you treat adults as children. This is not a list of guidelines and things that we will agree to. But if you're facilitating a hot topic, you might want to have some working assumptions. I will often say something like, I'm assuming that everyone here today wants to have this conversation in a respectful environment. And then I might invite people to raise their hand if that's not the environment they're expecting. Getting that off the bat clearly, not like they're children, but bringing it into the room can be a really useful thing further down the track if things are getting a little heated. Of course, knowing the principles of how to start a training session, the things you need to keep in mind, that's one thing. But having the activities that you can use to achieve that, that's a whole other thing altogether. If you head over to my website, you'll be able to download a free copy of this book, Facilitate This. It's got 45 activities to build connection and spark conversation in a group setting. You'll never be short of an activity to start your session ever again. The link is in the description below.